Good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO of Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad you could join us this morning for Coffee and Conversation. We're going to let Yvonne introduce herself in just a minute. So, good morning, my neighbor Yvonne, just a few streets over from me.
Good morning,
Anyway,
Dan.
Yvonne has a really, really interesting business, and she has a really interesting topic to discuss with you today. So, probably something you've never thought of. So, that should add a little intrigue. We are on Zoom, so if you have any questions, I'm sure she won't mind if you interrupt her and ask questions. If you're on Facebook Live, type those questions in, and Laura will get those answered for you. So, you know who I am, you know what the protocol is. Oh, also, this will be on YouTube later. So, if you need to refer to it, or want to send it to somebody else, you can do that. And who is doing self introductions? Is that you, Tiffany?
I can do it. All right. So I'm just going to go over on my screen. I'm going to call your name. Tell us who you are, what company you're with. We'll start with Deanna.
I'm Deanna Cosina with ADG Painting Services, and we're a commercial and residential painting service.
Doris.
Hello, Doris Gibbons, owner of Gibbons Insurance Agency.
Awesome. Sandy.
Good morning, Sandy Kusnoff with Frank's Glass.
Laura.
Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Jason.
Jason Michael Miller, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
All right. And then we have T. Big.
Sorry, I just got on here. Thomas Baker with Roof Prodigy, I suppose.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right, Yvonne, you're all set to go.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So, I'd like to take this in kind of three parts. And the first thing that I would like to speak about are just some preventative things that we all should be looking towards in our sunny state of Ohio. As you all may have heard about some winter predictions coming up for our cold snap that it sounds like from the Farmer's Almanac that we're going to be in for. So I don't know if you all have followed along with any of that, but what they are saying right now is we are supposed to have some seriously cold winter coming our way. So just wanted to discuss our title, of course, what to do when you have fire or flood or water damage in one's home or business. So let's just talk for a few minutes about some preventative things. The first thing that I had seen actually myself when we had the polar vortex freeze was frozen pipes. So I just wanted to kind of intersperse some personal things for me. I had a frozen pipe in my dishwasher, which was an outward wall facing. And some helpful things to be looking for right now is the lack of insulation with our cold temperatures. My exterior wall was where my dishwasher was. Naturally, I had a house full of people home when this occurred, and I was washing my dishes in my tub. So it's very important just to think about just the heat. And a really helpful hint that we all should be doing is when you know it's going to be freezing or below, open up those cabinets, right, and expose the areas of in your kitchen or bathroom if it's an outward facing wall. Be checking your insulation and making sure that you're looking at that to prevent a potential frozen pipe or some water loss. Yesterday, I was in a home with a client, and their son had overextended an extension cord. So the fire started in their son's bedroom. This is something we all can prevent and should be looking forward to checking our extension cords. When you overload your cord, that can cause a fire because the draw from the cord that you are plugging in too many devices. He had a cell phone, he had an air purifier, and he had his laptop. And you would think with an extension cord that that would not have caused a fire. Another thing to be really cautious about is using phone extensions when you're charging your phone charger with a foreign cord that isn't really adapted for your cell phone. So we have seen multiple fires in one's home or business from plugging in using a faulty cord that may be unfortunately coming from China that doesn't even adapt to your phone. So it's really important that you do a little research on this when you're overloading as we're heading into that holiday season, right? I've got a special extension cord for my Christmas tree, and I've got multiple things plugged in back there. Check that out. Read what the cord's bandwidth can handle. Do some research on that and investigate that. Another thing is we're all starting to use either space heaters in our offices that we hide under our desks to stay warm. Your fireplace at home, right? You're starting to look to light your fireplace. A lot of people burn with wood. So it's really important that you get your chimney cleaned, right? I'm sure the Greater Hamilton Chamber has some folks that they can point your way to have this work done. It's also very important to understand 36% of homes are heating with wood primarily, with the oil price being up. 1 in 3 homes right now is supplementing with some sort of heat. So it's really important that you think about space heaters under your desk. When you leave to go home from your office, it's really important that you either set a reminder and make sure that your office manager or someone reminds you to unplug those things, or even create a group text to remind everybody about that at work. And in your home, it's important. I know my son used to have one in his dorm. So it's just important to kind of review these types of things with your family. And the other thing that we see a lot of usages, and I know I'm guilty of this is the season of candles, right? Everybody starts lighting those Christmas candles, or my pumpkin spice candle in my kitchen. And I was in a home last week where the lady had lit her candles in the kitchen. She was cooking. She went out to take her trash can to the end of the street, turned around and came back, and smoke was coming out of her home. So it's very important that you're mindful, even if you just go upstairs, to get a snack from your family room or something like that, and you're leaving those candles unattended, especially when you have young ones. They could be running around if it's at a level where they can reach and they potentially knock the candle over. It happens. So it's just something to be mindful of. So those are just some helpful hints I wanted just to mention for all of us to look out. I'm sure there's many more. But then I just kind of wanted to talk briefly with regard to fire and flood in one's home this time of the year. And it's very important to remember, really have a great conversation with your firemen when they're on scene. It's very important that you listen to what they're saying. Do not go back into the home. If your home has certain areas of the home that has been either shut off or roped off from the fire department, and there could be an ongoing investigation, guys, it's so important not to go back into those areas. We all need to be mindful that smoke and soot is a carcinogen. So it's very important if you have children, pets, those types of things, and you're trying to coordinate, when your home or your business can be entered again. It's very, very important that you're mindful of what your fire department is telling you. And then I just kind of wanted to review a couple of things. And I'm sure Doris will be able to mine this out more for us, but it's so important to make sure that you are documenting everything. You're taking photos, you're filing your claim, you're asking your insurance company for a portal, potentially, right? And also temporary housing when you're going through this process. So it's very important just to keep these things in mind. And it's very traumatic. And another hat that I wear is I'm also a counselor. And it's just keeping in mind, right, to give yourself, some empathy and grace with your family as you process this. It's very challenging when one has a loss in one's home or their business. And it's very important that you work together with not only your fire department, your adjuster, but your agent is so critical during this time, everyone. And to have that good, healthy conversation with them about steps that need to be taken, whether it's securing your property, making sure you're addressing that water damage, to make sure that you're engaging with a company that is able to work with you on that. I know the Chamber has got some great mitigation companies I'm sure that they would be able to recommend. But it's so important to take those steps to secure your family and your property safely, and to make sure that you are mindful of what is not going on outside of the home while you're in this traumatic stage, but that you're able to process these things along with your agent. So agents are very important. And so I wanted to share with you personally my policy. And so my policy for my insurance company actually was renewed a week ago. And so I just wanted to take a more personal look at my own policy and to go through some things and changes that I personally made within my own home on my own policy. So if you don't mind, I'd like to really kind of first off say it's very important. I was never a receipt keeper. Guys, I cannot tell you how critically important it is to save, especially on those larger expenditures. Have you all seen the price of refrigerators lately? I mean, my gracious, it's so important if you buy new appliances, new TVs, these larger purchases. It's critically important to make a file in your home or even online or in the cloud. Take photos and make sure that you keep those receipts if you're not a paper keeper. But it's also important, I cannot stress enough, to use your phone, walk through room by room in your home with your voice and record what is going on in your own home. So for instance, if you start out in your living room, that's the best place to begin. Walking through with your phone and videoing and speaking, do you have antiques? Do you have a brand new reclining Italian leather sofa, matching set? Speak these things out as it's very important for the value of those things. An example would be, do you have a Serta Sealy Posturepedic pillow top mattress? That seems like a small thing, but it's also a very critical component, which helps not only when you have a loss, to be able to describe room by room what is going on in your own home. And it's also important, and Doris will be able to address this much better than I, but really just to think about riders on your policy. Do you have, for instance, are you a lover and you collect a lot of firearms? Do you need to put a rider on your policy for your firearms? Are you an avid wine drinker? So, for instance, when you have a fire loss, the tannins in your wine heat up and you could be losing quite a bit financially if you have, for instance, a love or passion for wine. Video that. What's going on? Don't forget your garage. A lot of people completely don't even think about what happens in their garage. So as Dan, I am a motorcycle person. Make sure you're videoing what's going on in your garage. Do you have a Mercedes-Benz? Do you have a Harley-Davidson motorcycle? Make sure that if your roof comes in and you're having, for instance, a fire loss or a tree comes through your home from potentially a neighbor, what is in your garage? Don't leave that out. Even if you have an unfinished portion of your basement, but you have a lot of things that you store down there, as I like to say, an eclectic mix, make sure that you're videoing that. Maybe that's where you're storing all of your collectibles for Christmas and you have an entire village from your grandmother. Not that you need to uncover everything, but walk through and explain and tell a story of what's going on in your home. So for me and my policy that I just renewed, I wanted to share with you, and this is actually my policy that I just renewed on Friday, personal property coverage, and I'm going to let Doris speak more to that. But for me personally, is what I did is when I began my policy, I have changed a lot of appliances in my kitchen. So for instance, I ordered a new dishwasher from Paid Appliance. And I wanted to evaluate that. It was much more expensive than the dishwasher that I had. I have a 3-door with a pull-out freezer, an extended refrigerator. And so what I may have paid for that years ago, today, that's worth $3,500. So in your personal property coverage, it's very important that you're evaluating what is in your home currently. Maybe this policy is 5 years old. Who knows? Some people never even evaluate their personal property coverage. Keeping in mind, if you become displaced from either a water loss or a fire loss, in your personal property coverage is your displacement. So, for instance, if you're getting an Airbnb home while there's some build back going on in your home, you need to take that into account. Also, look at your structure coverage. Maybe when you had an addition put on your home 15 years ago, it may have cost one particular cost, but as we all know today, everything has increased and is raised. So it's really important, I think, to take some time and really evaluate your personal property coverage and your structure coverage. Typically, those are in 2 different parts of your policy. So it's really important, I think, to ask your agent, right? You certainly have the option to ask your agent for a copy of your own particular policy and review that. Sit down and look around in your home and see what you've replaced. Another example for me is on the back of my home. I had an extension off of the side of my home, and it's not a full covered area, but it's a brand new covered porch that I had put on the back of my home. That was not on my policy. So I think we sometimes forget, things or additions and things or new items that we're purchasing in our home. And it's really important that you have enough coverage to make sure that you're taking care of what's going on within your home and also your company and your business. A lot of individuals do not have what we would call sump pump backup coverage. It's so important to evaluate that as well. If you're not on a slab and you have a sump pump, or you have a regular plumbing in your basement, but it's important to understand, is your basement refinished? Take a look at what's in your family room downstairs and evaluate that as well. So those are some helpful things. I see there's a question, or somebody has put something in the chat, and I can mine out a little bit more on some other steps to take. But do we have any questions as we go along?
The chat is just a comment that says, "This is fantastic guidance."
Oh, wonderful. Well, it is very important, as we all have these types of things that we go through, to be, mindful, not only if you live on your own, but if you have a family, pets, where are they crated? Are they not? Making sure that if there are stickers, we have a wonderful fire department, guys, in our city. We couldn't be more blessed with them. Reach out to your fire department. Do you need to have somebody come through and evaluate? If you've put on an addition, do you have a smoke alarm in that addition? How about a carbon monoxide tester? It's also really important, set a specific time of the year where you're changing out those batteries. Talk with your children. If you have young ones in the home, formulate a plan where to meet outside. If it's cold outside, do you have a neighbor maybe that you can say, hey, let's trade, right? If something would go wrong in my home, could I have my children wait there with you while the fire department comes? Or if I have frozen pipes, is it a potential possibility, that you can talk to a family member and formulate a plan with them temporarily while you're getting temporary housing or filing your claim or working through these details? Very, very helpful. But I'd like to turn this over to my wonderful friend, Doris, and let her kind of talk through. She has much more knowledge than I on policies, and let her chat with you all about that as well.
Well, thank you so very much. You did an excellent job and many tips and ideas that I would also want to share because they are worth repeating to the masses. No one wants to endure a claim, and we know they happen. And unfortunately, statistically, we will have a claim in our lifetime, whether it's fire or water loss, which is what we're focusing on today. I want to thank you for the invitation and say that it is important to know what happens after the fact. But to make things even better, it's important to know there's a difference for what you have in your policy. So thanks going over that because that will help determine what is paid and what we can claim. And of course, timing is everything. The sooner the cleanup starts, the better the outcome. So if someone calls me and they're frantic, understandably, because their washing machine hose broke and gallons of water are pouring out everywhere, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, have you turned off the main water? And of course, not everybody has. So then some people know right where it is and they go and do that. And others do not. So when we do annual reviews, we give them little ties to remind them where their water main is so they can get that clean water shut off. So those gallons and gallons quit pouring out onto their floor and ruining things, right? So timing is everything. The insurance company expect us to help, with the mitigation right away. We want to call in the experts to get it dried out and get things taken care of and make sure, of course, everybody is safe. Um, you mentioned important documents, and I couldn't agree more. We want to make sure that they've got those videos done ahead of time. And just like we know to check our smoke alarm batteries certain times of the year, we want to remind people that after the holidays, probably in the new year, is a great time to do videos of your home. Update them at least every 2 years, but I prefer when people show me they've done it every year. We walk through businesses for them, documenting their equipment and the estimated cost, as well as, hair salons with all their products and homeowners with their many electronics. These things are extremely important, and she did a great job of touching on that because every house is different. Some people collect things like, precious moments and beer can collections, things that we don't always think of because maybe they're dated to us. But then, of course, you've got somebody that has jewelry out the wazoo. And of course, I understand that, but we need to make sure that that gets an endorsement so that it's scheduled. We want to make sure that if you are a person that has a lot of guns, which there are plenty of people that do, that those are also scheduled for during the claim. We can make sure that you get the check needed for those items. But after a loss, it helps the adjuster and the restoration companies to know what kind of condition it was in, what all you did have. Some people are minimalist and some people are not. And I'm not going to necessarily talk about hoarders, but I am certainly going to talk about the average household. And we have a ton of items. And she did a wonderful job of saying what your house has at the renewal does not necessarily reflect what is in your particular home. So you do want to sit down with your agent for annual reviews. You want to go through that line by line to see what type of personal property coverage you have, what kind of replacement cost you have on the structure itself. And that's not just your home. That could be a fire in your barn or pole barn. You could have a gazebo. You could have all types of things outside of the structure itself. And that is also a separate coverage, just like she mentioned. The personal property is its own line item. And then we want to encourage people to use, video to do that because they can pick up their voice and talk about when they bought it. If it was just a brand new Christmas gift, they can mention that in there. And of course, it's going to have the date. And those are important things. But when a loss happens, emotions run really high. And understandably, nobody's wanting to deal with that. It's an inconvenience. They never come at the prime time because there is no prime time, right? And the instinct sometimes is to pick up the phone and call an 800 number because it's Saturday night and you're really worried and you just grab the phone. But as an agent for 30 some years, I suggest you do not do that. It can be a time that you absolutely have to. If the fire obviously has taken over the entire house and it's catching the neighbor's home on fire, we wouldn't want you to hesitate to get help immediately. But if there's smaller claims like the washing machine hose mentioned, or a tiny fire in your shed, those type of things, talk to your agent because we want to know if it's worth filing the claim now. Will it be below my deductible amount? Will it still count as a claim? These are all normal questions to have. And 30 some years ago, your homeowner's policy had one deductible. That was standard. You had maybe a deductible of 500 or even 1,000. That was what your home policy deductible was. But that is not true today. Every endorsement has its own deductible. Even wind and hail has its own deductible. So depending what type of loss we're talking about, that's where that deductible is going to apply. So as an example, since we're talking about fire, a fire is going to be your regular peril on a homeowner's policy, or if you have rental properties, those type of things. And the minimum is always 1,000. That's what you get nowadays, right? But most people carry much higher. But a lot of carriers that we represent have percentages. So it's a percentage of what your home is insured for. So obviously, if your home is 500,000 for the dwelling itself, then your deductible is 1% of that. So if the claim is going to be $4,998, even if the loss was, say, 6,000, it is worth talking to the agent to see if it's even worth turning in that little bit. Of course, you are allowed to. You're never not allowed to. But is it in your best interest? Because claim frequency and claim payouts matter on your eligibility and on your rating. And so is it worth filing? It makes us pause for a moment, right? Because if I already know that you had two other claims because someone got pushed on a jungle gym set and someone broke their arm because your child had an accident happen, and that was a medical claim we paid out. And then I also know that you had another incident with something, then a third claim is going to really make a huge difference if that's in a 5-year period. And for all of Ohio and Indiana, that is the look back time. They want to know frequency and payout in the last 5 years. And it is important because we want, to get great coverage at the best value, so the lowest rate. And if these things have happened, even if you hadn't had a claim for a decade, and 3 things happen, boom, 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 in 5 years, which things happen in 3, don't they say that? Then we want to know that, this is a claim big enough to warrant the potential that that could cause, because there is risk in things like that. And so important to talk to your agent first, if at all possible, even for little sidewalk falls outside your house, all types of things, not just fire and water losses, but those are obviously big claims and we're focusing on today. A no pay claim payout is still a claim. So let's say it's Saturday night, middle of the night, you've called that 800 number, you've talked to the rep, they've taken the claim, they've assigned a claims number, they're assigning a claims adjuster. But then on Monday, you talk to your agent and you figure out that this is very minimal and you really don't think you want to turn in the claim. So your thought is, I just want to close this. Well, of course we can close that, but the claim is on record and it still counts as a claim even without a payout. And that makes a difference in our frequency. And hate to be the bearer of bad news sometimes, but again, just a friendly reminder, talk to your agent, make sure that it's big enough that it would warrant wanting to turn that in. Clarifying deductibles again, because if you have service line coverage, which is an important endorsement for the things that are underground outside of your home, and you have a loss, that typically comes with a $500 deductible. So if the claim is 6,000 as the example, it makes much more sense to turn that in than if it happened in the home with a leak, under the sink, because the deductible could be 5,000 as my example earlier. And please stop me if you have any questions. I love talking insurance and I'm happy to go over things. But deductibles are very different for different endorsements. Understanding coverages, policies are not created equal. Your neighbor could have replacement cost or actual cash value. You don't know. Exclusions matter. They could have had prior claims and they have an exclusion that you don't know about. So I say that because a lot of times when there's like, we'll talk about a tornado for a moment. Well, my neighbor got this or my neighbor got that, or I'm getting this, but they're not. Why not? Well, there's a lot of reasons that could be the case, right? Not all water losses are the same. Where did the water come from? If it is a leak that has happened from a pipe behind a, what do you want to call it? Like a bathroom stall wall. And that leak has taken time to damage the exterior and things that you even finally notice that, then that is going to be an endorsement covered by hidden water. And you have a deductible that applies for that. But hidden water would be one of those things that would only be covered if you have that endorsement. Normal claims are sudden and accidental. So clearly if something burst, we know that that is something that is sudden and accidental, like your frozen pipe example. Thank you for that. And that's going to be a covered loss on a homeowner's or a commercial property. But hidden water, which is a normal claim, is only going to be covered if they have that particular endorsement. So again, where did the water come from? We're going to talk about not just the endorsements, but also we need to know if it's surface water. I'm sure most people know when it rains really hard here in our area, that water can come in through little cracks in our foundation and even through openings of a wall, that window wall that's not sealed well, those type of things. And when that happens, that's usually flood insurance. And flood is different policy entirely than your homeowners. And flood insurance is something you need in those cases. Now, it used to be that you could never add that endorsement to a home policy. It was a separate policy in particular. But that is changing as things evolve, just like all industries. Things change over time. And so for educational purposes, know that that is something you may be able to add on now, right? So surface water is a separate policy, or you can add it as an endorsement, but it's more than likely you're going to be something that you're going to take through your flood policy through FEMA. Replacement cost on contents is very important, not just on the property. And there are people that for shaving cost, they sometimes want bare minimums. They sometimes don't want the bells and whistles. And at the moment, I understand sometimes why they may say that. But at the end of the day, if you've dealt with a loss like we have, you know that they're going to be very upset when they realize, what do you mean I'm going to get a quarter for a sweater that I paid $60 for? Because it's like, almost like yard sale prices in truth. I wore that sweater for the last year and now it's used and that's actual cash value. That is not replacement cost. So you always want replacement cost on the building, on the structures, on the contents, those type of things. Temporary living expenses, she talked about, which is loss of use on your property policy. So when you're looking at that, you want to know if you can't stay in the home because the fire department has determined it's unsafe and you need to go stay in an apartment or rent a hotel, depending on how long we're talking, then you need income to come to you for that, which is what they're paying you. So it's going to be for the laundromat and eating out and all those things because now you've been put out of your home and it costs much more. So save your receipts. So as we like to say, document, 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 because when disaster strikes, we are really frantic and we've got a lot going on and a lot of moving pieces. And you do want your agent involved in your restoration mitigation companies. And you do need to talk with your adjuster. And there is a portal and we're going to upload all those things for you. We're also going to share the videos that I already have before the disaster struck. But you want to know that that stuff is all being worked on, right? And it is one of those things that it's a lot of paperwork, I'm being honest, and those receipts are really valuable because every little thing you do will add up quickly, and we just want to make sure that you're getting back what you deserve, right? We want fair. So understanding coverage details, knowing what your coverage is about, make sure that if you think you could have possibilities from surface water or ordinance of law code upgrades. You want that included in your home. If your home is older like mine, there is a lot of changes that we have no control of, that what the code is now to rebuild. Maybe I need a handrail on something because I didn't need it before. Maybe I need more outlets in a room because of code upgrades. Now I need to know that it can be built like that because that's what's going to be required. And you need an endorsement like that. And then I think the most important endorsements, and there's so many besides scheduling jewelry and firearms, those type of things, but service line coverage, sewer and sump bump backup, that is just, I almost think that it's overlooked way more than it should be. We review policies all the time and it's not there, and we talk to them about it. And as soon as they know what it does, they of course want it added. Just like a medical checkup, it's smart to do your insurance reviews. Your agent should be meeting with you annually, but at least every 2 years. It's best if they still make house calls and come and see additions that you've done or that you got a brand new roof, because roofs are a huge rating factor and everybody wants the best deal. So if you have a brand new roof, of course, that saves you big time dollars on your annual cost. Um, I want to give a real life example. We had somebody call. They had water coming from somewhere. They didn't even know where. They were just very frantic and they wanted to turn in a claim because this was a Mason home and it's a beautiful home. And they just wanted to make sure that it was, something handled right away. So of course, we have plumbers, we have roofers, we have great people like our service masters and all these places like ServPro, that we want them to get help before we turn in the claim. So lo and behold, a plumber went out. It was a tiny little issue that was fixed for under $200, and there would have been no reason to turn in a claim. It was clean water. They were able to shop back it up, and it was all handled very quickly. And even though at that moment they were kind of terrified, it was all okay. And so again, an example of why we wouldn't turn one in, but why we understand why you want help immediately. And we want that for you. There's three big players: adjusters, you're insured, and the restoration company working with your agent, because we want to track everything, want to make sure things get put in that portal timely. You have a window to get a claim settled. And if there's an extension needed because it was a massive claim situation, we need to know to ask for that, because sometimes things don't wrap up in a year. We would like them to for everybody involved, but sometimes they just do not. Communication is key. I think anybody that's ever been in a loss before understands how important communication is. We want to make sure that everybody is doing what they needed when it needs done. People will complain sometimes because they're doing a dry out and these loud fans are running for 3 days and they really can't stand it. They can live in their home because it's livable, but they just cannot stand the noise. And they'll say, like, can we just turn these off now? And I'm not a restoration company, obviously, but I know better. It takes time to dry that all out. We don't want mold. We don't want corrosion. Again, that's why we are asking for claims to be handled as quick as possible so that those things don't happen. And we want total dry outs done when it's necessary. Insurance is here to protect everybody. The key is to understand it before you need it. I think that's really important. I think some big takeaways is to make sure you talk to your agent before filing a claim. Know your coverage and all your endorsement options. There are many, and most people don't even really look at the policies that are mailed to them annually. But if your agent isn't reaching out to you on their own to say it's that time again, to make sure that you are calling them and saying, hey, I think it's time for us to review. Let's sit down and do that. Keep your documents current. We all buy new things. Some of us more than others because they like to shop. And so when that's the case, you want to make sure that you have a video of your dressing room, if boots and shoes are your thing. But of course, there are a lot of men that their garage is immaculate with a million tools. And I'm not exaggerating. Some of them look better than my closet, and I'm a little impressed, right? So when that's the case, we want to make sure that those tools tools are videoed, that the person is telling me what they all are, because some of the things I don't know that type of saw, and they can tell me the estimated value, and they can tell me when they bought it and those type of things. So communication, documentation, and being prepared helps everyone involved. And we want you to recover as fast as possible. That is what all of our goals is. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Not seeing anything on Zoom, but I am taking notes right now.
Oh, good. That makes me happy to hear.
I would say kind of want to echo what Doris said. It's just so important to sit down with your family and have a plan.
Yeah.
And it takes, 15, 20 minutes. And it one of the biggest things that I have seen, especially with children, is formulating a plan. Here's our meeting spot. And make sure that it's far enough from the house, but yet in a safe area. Or again, formulate a plan with a great neighbor that you have, if this happens, maybe not, but if it does, here's what our plan is. And it's just so important to keep all of those things in the back of your mind. And I would really share, even if you have grown children, hey, take a video of what's in your house. I mean, as they all, the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And like Doris was saying, I have seen some amazing, immaculate garages, and there's more money out there than in his wife's closet.
Yes.
So
Shocking.
yeah, it's just so important. And I think of people, who have like a little side business, and it's just important if you're storing things in your home, like let's pretend in a room, an old bedroom or something, that's your side business. We were at a fire a couple of years ago, and she was just a huge sensitive person. So many of these gorgeous ceramics. I mean, we're talking floor to ceiling. And of course, all of her little wax pieces, they all melted. And she had purchased all of this inventory and had not accounted for any of that inventory. So when it came to her policy, she hadn't, documented any of this. She had no account of, the inventory that she had over. It was just so hard on her. And she had a full-time job, but yet this was her side gig, and she was passionate about it. And it was unfortunate that it was right next to the room of where her dryer vent, another great thing to check, by the way. The lint buildup had gathered so much over the years that it set a fire, and the washer and dryer were in the same storage room area. And so she lost everything in that room. And she hadn't talked to her agent. There was no discussion. There was nothing on her policy. She had no documentation with regard to it. And so when you're in the middle of that, pulling all of that from either the company that you're working with or another organization, that you're, dealing with, it's just very, very important. So I can think of one more thing that's coming to my mind is a firebox, right? One of those boxes. You can get them at Walmart. Myers sells them. And it's very important. Put your paperwork in there. Make sure that you're telling somebody else, hey, here's the spare key, and make sure that they know where that is at. So when you need to access that, and you're potentially tied up with other things going on, you can ask someone, or even the fire department, hey, can you grab that for me? It's got all my important documentation in it. Just some other thoughts.
Thank you. I'd like to add a few things too, Jason, if that's okay. Okay, so with liability on a homeowner's, because we really didn't touch on that, you can be liable for, I don't want to say you're poor cooking, but cooking fires really do happen, especially this time of year going into the holidays. And of course, leaving those candles unattended. And we know electrical fires and all those things happen, but people will light up today all the time and go to bed, and then they fall asleep, and all those things that can happen. Your homeowner's liability will pay for damage that you're liable for. So your house or your building or your shed or your barn or your gazebo, any of those things can catch something else on fire. You're liable for that. Heavens forbid you have a sleepover that night and you lock the teenage girls in the basement because you just didn't want to hear them anymore. And a fire happens, you're liable. And I know it, God forbid, it's a terrible thing to happen, but fatalities do happen in these type of losses. And you want to make sure that your liability on your home is maxed out. So we could talk about many things like underlying coverage for your home, your auto, your boats, your jet skis, all these things, and then to get an umbrella. But since we're focusing on home, most homeowners policies come with a standard 300,000 liability. But you and I both know ambulance rides, being in ICU for a few days, even if the person's going to be fine with, physical therapy, that's going to take time. 300,000 will not go very far. So literally you can up it to 500,000 or you can up it to 1 million. Everybody should be carrying 1 million on their homeowner's policy. We're talking literally instead of $12 a year, maybe it's $16 a year. It's a very inexpensive coverage to increase. And of course, I want you to have an umbrella, which goes above that when that were to get maxed out, if the claim were to be that type of situation. But not everybody carries an umbrella, and some people don't qualify because just like eligibility for, can I get a preferred rate for my home because of claims and things like that, or even driving records stop people from getting an umbrella. We want to make sure that you get the most you can get on your existing homeowner's policy or your rental property. So everybody on this call should already know I want at least $1 million on my home. It's very inexpensive and claims add up fast, and especially for anything that you might be liable for. And a jury in Ohio of 9, right? They are quick to award huge payouts because we all think, when insurance has got all that money, they don't ever think it would hurt any of us, which we all know, of course, it affects us and our rates, and all these payouts matter. But a jury is going to give them a ton of money, and that's just going to be the way it plays out, even if the person is screaming, well, I didn't mean for it to happen and all these things. It just is one of those things that we want to protect ourselves and the best way we can. And if you can afford a few bucks, that's an easy way to do it. Thanks, Jason.
And you said $12 to $16 a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like people will come in with their deck pages and they're carrying, the minimum is 100,000, which we rarely see, but it still exists because some people have had their same limits, whether on their auto or their home, for 30 some years. And they
Right.
still have, 100,000 on their home because no one's ever told them, do you know you can increase this and how this could help you and protect your assets, which is your home and your 401k and all these things for just a few dollars more. And as soon as someone educates them, which is what this is about today, education, right? Then they're more than willing to spend those few dollars on that because they get that it's worth it, right? It's pennies on the dollars. But just like people don't understand that, we touched on deductibles, but I want to touch on that people don't understand their different deductible levels and how they apply. So someone might have a 1% deductible, but they may think honestly that it's on the claim. So if it's a $10,000 claim, they think they're paying 1%, but that is not how it works. It is on the property coverage. So if the house is insured for a replacement cost, that replacement cost value is $650,000, then that deductible is now 6,500. So it's really important for people to understand what that deductible that is getting so common now percentage is based off of. And people just really sometimes don't know, and the contracts are written by attorneys for attorneys in a court of law, let's be real. And so even if people do review it, sometimes it's misunderstood. It's a big document with a lot of legal jargon. And so I just want people to understand that it is based on the replacement cost of the home. And that's not what we sell our home for. That is not what you think you could, sell it for yourself, or it's your school district. It's what in that era for your square footage will it cost us today to rebuild that home to the same light, kind, and quality at today's material and labor. And Yvonne, I think you did such an amazing job because I think this is such an important topic. And I got to be honest, I think when people hear insurance, maybe they don't run to talk more about it. But once they have a claim, then of course they want the best they can possibly get to be made whole again. But the only really good way to do that is to talk to someone first to make sure your collections and all those things we touched on are properly documented and protected. Thank you.
So Jason, you really touched on something with that figure. So if I can be transparent, like I was sharing, I had went through and reviewed my own policy. So the changes that I made, Jason, came to $14 for the year.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to talk to your agent. They're not trying to make tons of money. They're trying to make sure you're happy when something goes wrong, because that's what we're all paying insurance for. Because statistically, we will have a claim in our life for sure.
Correct. And just like when you go to the doctor or you're trying to even go to the dentist, sometimes we need to be our own advocate. So your agent or what you're going through, they cannot assist you if you're not investigating for yourself and being your own advocate for what you have going on.
I was not prepared to be blown away before 10 a.m. today. This is awesome.
Jason, I owe you a tea.
And I a honey stick.
Thank you. No, this is awesome. So I put a little bit of a recap together to email not only, the attendees today, but everyone that signed up. And can you guys just remind us which company that you're with and how we can get a hold of you?
Sure. Thank you so much. So my company, Jason, is a Blue Kangaroo Packoutz, and my company is a content company. So we liken it to say, if you take the roof off of your house and turn it upside down, everything that shakes out is a content. Everything that stays affixed is considered structure. So we are the ones that come alongside you after, for instance, like Doris had mentioned, the mitigation piece is done and the home is accessible, right, for safety. And then we begin the pack out process in cleaning of the content that we can restore and save to the pre-loss condition. So it's very important that we work together, not only with the contractor, with the homeowner, and also your insurance company. And the best way to get a hold of me would be if you just look up Blue Kangaroo Packoutz, Cincinnati, Dayton. We're on YouTube and pretty much all over. So we are certainly accessible, but feel free to contact me. My direct number is 513-667-3737.
And I'm Doris Gibbons, the owner of Gibbons Insurance Agency, and I'm that insurance agent for commercial and personal lines that want to make sure that you're properly protected before any claims happen. And you can reach me by cell 513, forgive me, I started to give you my personal cell. 513-202-9922, because that's what I do with clients. And then also you can look me up under Doris Gibbons, Gibbons Insurance Agency of American Family. We write for many carriers, including Chubb if you have a high-end home. And for insurance purposes, that's 2.5 million or higher. And so I'd be happy to help if you just have a generic question, or if you have had something that you're going through and you don't feel like your agent's returning your call. I love my field. I've been doing it for over 30 years and I really don't want it to have a bad name. So I'm available to you. And again, it's Doris. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm not seeing any in Zoom.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you, and you both, it was great information and very informative.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. For those that are watching on Facebook, so we do have some upcoming chamber events. You can keep in touch. We are part of the Southern Ohio Young Professionals, which is relaunching this year. We can get you connected with them. Later today, we have a business after hours at Miami. You can find more information on our website, hamilton-ohio.com. We're going to be collaborating with other chambers in the area. It's going to be a big night tonight. We also have some ribbon cuttings coming up. You can come and join and support these new businesses. Seraph by the River on 11/11. We also have a Pilates studio. 11/11 is the name, and that is they're doing a ribbon cutting on 11/11 as well. And then our Mix It Up November 13th at Bricks and Minifigs. We hope that you guys will get connected. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. This video will be live on our YouTube, so you can go back and reference anything. Doris, Yvonne, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Everyone, go out and join the chamber. It's great.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
blessed day, everyone.
Good to see
Thank
you all.
you.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye-bye.